After the Great Baba fire escape, Ijegun market was still in shock. But life had to move on. Or so they thought. Because barely 1 week later, another mysterious incident shook the entire community. This time, it involved Mr. Patrick. Now, if you don't know Mr. Patrick, let me explain. He was a no-nonsense man. A retired teacher with a loud voice, a big stomach, and a legendary love for oversized trousers. Every Sunday, Mr. Patrick would march to church in his famous brown trousers that could fit 2 people inside. It was his pride and joy. But on this particular Sunday, something unbelievable happened. Mr. Patrick arrived at church without trousers, just boxers and a singlet. Jesus! The church froze. The choir stopped singing. The ushers dropped their offering baskets. Even the pastor forgot his sermon. Because there, standing in front of the whole congregation, was Mr. Patrick, half naked, sweating, confused, and breathing like he had fought 10 demons. "What happened to your trousers?" the pastor shouted. And Mr. Patrick, still panting, spoke the most shocking words ever. "Somebody stole them from my body." Eh? The entire church screamed. How? When? Who stole trousers from a whole man? Even the ushers, who normally disciplined noisemakers, were now shouting louder than everybody else. At this point, service was suspended, because this was no ordinary problem. This was serious spiritual investigation. And that was how the case of the missing trousers began. Mr. Patrick was quickly wrapped in a church curtain to cover his unholy exposure. Then the elders gathered. "This is a new kind of madness," Deacon John said. "Who can steal trousers without touching the man inside?" Elder Grace asked. Pastor Williams nodded gravely. "This is not normal. We must ask questions." The entire church sat down, waiting. Then, the pastor turned to Mr. Patrick. "Tell us what happened, step by step." Mr. Patrick cleared his throat. "Pastor, it all started this morning. I woke up at 5 a.m., took my bath, and put on my favorite brown trousers. Then, I entered a kike, tricycle, to come to church. Everything was normal, but as I stepped out of the kike at the church gate, he paused dramatically. The church leaned in. Then he shouted, 'My trousers disappeared from my body.'" Eh? Women clutched their Bibles. Men held their chests. Even the drummer, who was normally dozing off during service, was now wide awake. Pastor Williams removed his glasses and cleaned them. "Wait, you mean, You were wearing trousers inside the kiki, but the moment you stepped out, they vanished." "Yes," Mr. Patrick wailed. "I didn't feel anything. No pulling, no cutting, just puff. My trousers were gone." The church erupted. "This is witchcraft. Someone used remote control. Is this the work of an eye?" Meanwhile, Deacon John was deep in thought. Something wasn't right. He adjusted his tie and turned to Mr. Patrick. "My brother, did you feel any breeze on your legs when it happened?" Mr. Patrick scratched his head. Now that you mention it, yes." Deacon John snapped his fingers. This is not juju, this is a professional pickpocket." Now, listen carefully. Ijegun had a legend. A mysterious thief who didn't steal phones, didn't steal money, didn't steal jewelry. He only stole trousers. They called him the Pant Snatcher. For years, he was just a rumor. People whispered stories about him, but nobody ever caught him. Some said he could remove trousers without unzipping them. Others claimed he had juju that made trousers obey his command. But nobody ever thought he was real. Until now. Because today, in broad daylight, in front of a church, Mr. Patrick had become his latest victim. The congregation fell into deep silence. Then, Pastor Williams stood up. "This is a serious matter," he said. "We must call The Ijegun Market Boys. Hey! If you don't know, the Ijegun Market Boys were the most dangerous investigative unit in the country. No uniforms, no ID cards, no office, just pure street intelligence and violence. Once they were involved, somebody would confess. By 3 p.m. that day, the Market Boys had blocked all roads. If you are wearing brown trousers today, remove it immediately, they commanded. By 5 p.m., they had interrogated every Kiki driver in the area, and by 7 p.m., they had a lead. A small boy named Emeka, aka Sharp Finger, was seen running behind Mr. Patrick's Kiki that morning. When they grabbed him, he confessed immediately. "No be me, oh, it was Master Solomon." "Ah, Solomon?" This was serious, because Solomon was not an ordinary thief. Solomon was the nephew of the most feared landlord in Ijegun. And if Solomon was involved, it meant the trouser snatching business was bigger than anyone expected. And so, the case of the missing trousers was just beginning. After Emeka's shocking confession, the Ijegun Market Boys knew they had uncovered something big. Master Solomon wasn't just a regular thief. He was the nephew of the most feared landlord in Ijegun, Chief Okafor, a man so wicked that even mosquitoes refused to enter his house. If Solomon was involved, it meant that this trouser snatching operation was deeper than anyone had imagined. By 8 p.m., Emeka was sitting on a plastic chair in the middle of the market, sweating like a Christmas goat. "Talk now," one of the market boys shouted, slapping the air near Emeka's head. "Where is Solomon?" "I swear, I don't know," Emeka cried. The market boys weren't convinced. "Okay, bring the Akara and Fanta," one of them ordered. Emeka's eyes widened. "Ah, the special torture treatment. They would give you hot Akara and cold Fanta, but they wouldn't let you eat or drink until you confessed." "Ah, please, I will talk," Emeka shouted. "Solomon has a secret trouser storage room." "Where?" "In his uncle's compound." "Eh?" So, the chief's own house was the headquarters of trouser snatching. This was serious. The market boys mobilized immediately. By 10 p.m., a massive crowd had gathered outside Chief Okafor's compound. Women were tying their wrappers tightly. Men were rolling up their sleeves. Even Pastor Williams had arrived just in case prayers were needed. "Solomon," one of the market boys shouted, "we know you are inside. Come out now before we enter." Silence. Then, a loud crash, the sound of someone running inside the compound. "He's trying to escape!" someone shouted. Immediately, 2 young boys climbed over the fence like Spider-Man. There was a brief struggle, a loud scream, and then, boom! Solomon was dragged outside, kicking and shouting. "Leave me! I am a businessman." "A businessman that steals trousers?" The crowd exploded. Even Chief Okafor, the landlord, came outside in his nightrobe. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Chief, your nephew is the reason Ijegun men are walking around without trousers." The chief turned to Solomon. "Is it true?" Solomon, still struggling, finally gave up. "Yes," he muttered, "it is true." The crowd gasped. But why? Why was one man stealing only trousers? And then, Solomon revealed the shocking truth. Solomon sighed deeply. Then he said something nobody expected. "I did it for love." "Eh?" The crowd nearly collapsed. "You mean to tell us," Baba Musa shouted, "that all this madness is because of woman?" Solomon nodded. "Her name is Cynthia," he explained. "She told me she only dates men who wear fine trousers." "Ah." Mama Nkechi, who had been quiet, finally exploded. "So, because of one woman, you turned to trouser robbery?" Solomon looked ashamed. "I just wanted to impress her," he muttered. "But I didn't have money for expensive trousers, so I started collecting." The crowd face-palmed. Even Chief Okafor rubbed his head in frustration. Then, just as things were cooling down. A female voice suddenly spoke from the back of the crowd, and when everyone turned, they saw her. Standing there, dressed in high heels and designer handbag, was the one and only Cynthia. And what she said next changed everything. The final twist, Cynthia's secret. Cynthia flipped her Brazilian wig. Then she said, "Solomon, you fool. I never told you I wanted trousers." "Eh?" Solomon's mouth dropped open. "You what?" he whispered. Cynthia shook her head. "I told you I like men with good fashion sense. It didn't mean you should go and start stealing trousers." The entire street fell silent. And then, Baba Musa burst out laughing, followed by Mama Nkechi. Then, the whole crowd. Chaos. After all the wahala, Solomon had been stealing trousers for nothing. At that moment, Solomon fell to his knees and screamed, "My enemies have finished me!" But nobody pitied him, because from that day forward, Solomon became a legend. Not as a businessman, not as a fashion expert, but as the most foolish trouser thief in Ijegun history. And that, my friends, is how the great trouser theft finally ended. If this story made you laugh, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more crazy and hilarious stories. Would you continue attending a church where somebody's trousers disappeared mysteriously? Let me know in the comments.